Hey everyone, today we're going to be removing the deck, swapping the blades, and reinstalling the deck on this John Deere E130 riding lawnmower. Over time, rocks and sand are just going to wear down the blade and it's going to need to be sharpened, and that needs to be removed to do so. So we're going to jump right into it. Before I get started, however, I do want to make sure that the mower is in park, so pushing down the brake, I'm then able to pull up on the parking brake till it locks in position and let go of the foot brake, and verifying it's engaged. Make sure that key is nowhere near the ignition, we'll bring it inside, and if you wish, disconnect the battery for added safety. This tractor was rode hard and put away wet. We could see a lot of debris accumulated around here, so what we're going to do, before we do anything else, we're going to blow all this off to get a lot of this out of here before we go any further. That at least got some of it off. Next, using small wooden blocks, I used these in the deck alignment video. I place one under each side of the deck. On this one, I have to lift the plastic shroud before placing it in the right location. Now, keeping in mind what my current deck height is on this adjuster, it's 2 bars under the 4. I will now bring it all the way down to the lowest position, where the deck will now rest on those wooden blocks if they're in the right location. This block looks good, and lifting the shroud we see that this block looks good. Now we can continue. If they're not centered, raise the deck, readjust, and try again. Next we'll remove the lower deck engagement cable, and this starts with the removal of this locking pin right here. So I'm just going to pull it straight out and put this in a safe location. Gently pulling back on the cable, I can release it from this metal bracket, lifting it up and then off the bracket, just like so. Now I need to remove this cable spring from this bracket, and I can tell you, there's no way to do it with your bare hands, it's too difficult. So instead I'm going to use a pair of lineman's pliers to gently bend the end, and it comes right off with no issues at all. I'll then pull that cable under everything and get it out of the way. That's a big spring, it would be difficult to bend with the hands. I'll place everything up on the feet area as I work. Next, I'll remove this locking pin from this rear shaft arm. Put it off to the side, as well as this washer, and place that off to the side. Now I could gently pull it towards me and off of that spline. I'll just leave it right there for now. On the same side, I will pull this pin on the lift link. It's a bigger pin. And then I'll remove this washer. The link can then slide off, at which point it can be turned 90 degrees to be removed from the deck. It's keyed. I lock the washers in the clip so they don't get lost, but this is what I've collected from this side. I'll then repeat the same exact tasks on the other side, somewhat harder to reach because of that flap on the deck, but everything is disconnected in the exact same manner. Once all these pieces are removed, again, I'll store them at the footwell of the tractor like so, and make my way to this spring lock pin on this front draft rod, which is a little more difficult to remove than the other clips, but it does come out. And in doing so, I drop the washer right under the deck, which I then retrieve and drop again. The rod is then pushed out to disconnect it from the deck. Finally, the belt is lifted over the guard and under the pulley to release it from this side, and then I'll go around the other side and do the exact same thing, lifting it from the guard and dropping it. And then I want to tuck it in behind this plastic piece, if only to protect it during deck removal. I inspect this side to make sure everything is clear between the deck and the mower before I attempt to remove the deck. Going around to the other side, I see that this bar and cable are stuck. Lifting the bar, I bring the cable out and around. Now this cable is pulled off to the side with no further obstructions. Now I remove the wooden blocks. The other one on this side, the deck had shifted when I removed the first block, so I just pulled it out from under. Now from the flap side of the deck, I gently slide the deck from under the tractor and away from it. This completes our initial task. The belt is now untucked, but this deck is in dire need of cleaning. It's very impacted. I'm going to start with the blower to remove any of the loose debris from here before it turns into mud when I move on to the next step. That did a good job. But now I'll break out the hose. And the hose makes quick work of the rest of the debris, but I'll tell you there's a lot under those two plastic covers for the pulleys for the blades. We'll address that later. Under this flap as well and along that metal perimeter we could see it impacted, so I clean out this area too. And now the top portion of the deck is starting to look good, so now it's time to flip it over. We'll get it into the middle of the driveway. First I'll flip it 90 degrees straight up into the air, and then flip it once again onto its back. This is also severely impacted, so I'll start by hitting it with the hose to see what loose debris comes up. I don't expect a lot of it to come up till I go and hit it with a brush, so I'm going to stop and just scrape it first. I could have found a more appropriate brush than this, but it did do the job. Now hitting it again with the hose, once it was hit with the brush, I was able to remove all the debris from the bottom of the deck, freeing up everything. The bottom of the deck is now looking good. We're about ready to move on to the next step. However, first I'm going to have to clean my driveway, which is now covered with all the crap that came out of it. While you can use a large 2x4 for the next step, I always use my blade locking tool to do this task. I'll provide a link down in the bottom. And I just put it around a flat side of the deck, screw it down tight around the blade like so, and then snug it down a bit more. And now if I try and move the blade in any direction, we can see that it's locked in position and it's safe. Next, I'll be using a 15/16 bit on an impact driver. Now I realize this is not an impact bit, but I'll get by. And just a quick note, as we see the blade is on this side, so obviously it spins in this direction. You would think, however, that we would be reverse thread to remove the nut, but we're not. As we see here, the nut will spin in the same direction as the blade would spin, and this pneumatic tool makes quick work of the nut removal. I'll just tighten it down a couple turns because I'm not ready to remove it yet. Unloosening now my blade locking tool, I'll remove it and transfer it to the other side, where I'll then proceed to lock it back down. At which point I'll loosen the other blade using the same procedure. Again, placing the washer and nut back on. This blade could either be swapped out, or depending on its condition, it could be sharpened to run like new. For those interested in sharpening the blades, I have a separate video that goes into the conventional sharpening with a file, as well as some aftermarket appliances used to sharpen the mower blades. We'll look at the positives and negatives, also getting into the critical step of balancing the blades, which presents a challenge on these types of center fittings. So we're going to try out some aftermarket items to do so. If you're interested, click the link in the top right corner. That being said, I've removed the first blade, which I have sharpened and balanced as we see. You could also replace it if need be. And I'm going to remove the nut and washer that I've stored on the deck so it would not get lost. I'm going to reinstall the blade. It's got to fall into those notches because of the way it's designed. So I got to turn it just right and it drops in. I'll place the washer back on, noting the direction, as well as the nut, again noting the direction, and just hand tighten it down. Sufficient for now. Moving on to the other blade, again, same procedure. Remove it, sharpen it, and balance it. And then when we're done, we'll continue back with this project where we'll place it back in, aligning the notches till it seats. Place the washer on in the correct direction, followed by the nut in the correct direction, and hand tighten it down. I'll set up a torque wrench now to 65 foot-pounds using the 15/16 socket, and laying the deck up against the wall because it's impossible to do this facing upwards because the whole thing will rotate when you tighten it down. I'm going to tighten down one blade at a time. And here's the first one. Then I'll remove my blade locking tool, placing it on the other blade and tightening it down. I'll then torque down this one to 65 foot-pounds. And that's it for the blades. So now I'll just remove that blade locking tool. We'll move on to the next step. I'll lay the deck back down, right side up. At this point, I'd like to point out that I do have a comprehensive maintenance video for this tractor. If you've never done so, or you're due for maintenance, this would be an opportune time, with everything currently taken apart, to go through all of these steps to ensure the tractor will run efficiently and trouble-free for many years to come. Even if you're not ready for scheduled maintenance, it's extremely easy on the deck while the deck is removed from the tractor, so there's no reason not to do it. I'll post a link to this video up here on the top right, as well as in the comments below. With that in mind, one thing I could easily check are these two bearings on these idler pulleys. This one is a little more stiff than the big one, but still good for another season. I'll remove these covers too to check these bearings. And pulling the brake away, I'll give the bearings a spin to listen to them, and yeah, not new sounding, but can last another season. Finally, at a minimum, I would re-grease these bearings while this was open. So everything is cleaned, the blades have been sharpened and balanced, maintenance has been conducted everywhere. I'll now pull the belt out of the way so we can put this deck back on the tractor. And that means with the tractor and deck lined up, I'm just going to shimmy the deck back under the tractor in the approximate middle position. We could further center it by setting up this bracket against the front draft rod, which I'll then lift and bring towards the hole, the same one I removed it from. The belt, which I had previously tucked away, can now be rolled back out into position, allowing the belt one side at a time to be pressed through the belt guard and placed within the pulley. Going around the other side, I repeat this process. The belt is now connected. At this point, I'll place the washer over the end of the draft rod, after which I'll replace the spring locking pin and make sure everything's secure. I now want to push the deck back in position to take up the slack of the draft rod, so I'll just push it back now till it stops against the adjusting nut, and we're done. Placing the wooden block under the deck will allow me to get the clearance that I need for the next step. Now in place, raising the deck, I'll be able to put in the next piece, and that'll be the adjustable lift link brought in sideways and then turned 90 to lock in place, sitting over that bar. I'll then place the washer over, which has been secured in the clip. The washer goes on first, and the clip locks it into place. Now I'll rotate the rear draft arm up into position, and I'm going to need to negotiate it around this cable and adjust the deck ever so slightly until the holes line up. So I'm going to push it back and now down, and it slides into position. Washer and clip stored together. I'll put the washer on first. This will be followed by the clip, which I'll lock into place. I've had the cable spring held up in the height adjuster, so I remove it now, and I'll place it on the ground. The wooden block really doesn't do anything on this side, and that's fine, I just place it under here. At which point I'll repeat all those processes that I just did, except on the other side. One last sliding of the deck from the rear should align this piece, getting everything straightened out. Finally, the washer and clip securing the deck to the mower. At this point, I'll raise and lower the height adjustment so I can make sure that everything is working smoothly. There are no issues. Everything seems fine. The wooden blocks are removed, and the height is brought back down to the lowest position. The spring is then pushed back under the belt and the linkage, bringing it back to the bracket from which it was removed, and it just placed down with a little pressure, snaps back into position. Easier to put back on than it is to remove. The engagement cable is pulled through this slot and pushed back in so it is seated in the bracket. The remaining clip is then pushed through the end of this cable, locking it into position. A quick check ensures a secure fit. From the top of the mower, I engage the blades a couple of times just to check and make sure that everything is working properly, and I can see that everything is working just fine, so we continue. And with that, I put my blade height selector back to where it originally was before this project began. A final once-over is conducted on all the work that was done on this deck to ensure that everything has been placed back correctly. No missing parts or pieces, nothing is binding, everything is good. Let's try it out. With that, it's now safe to reintroduce the key back into the mower, and if the battery was disconnected for added safety, it can now be reattached. with the blades disengaged, we'll give it a go. Allowing a minute to warm up before we begin testing, I engage the blades slowly, checking for any strange sounds or any excessive vibrations. I hear nothing, everything sounds good, and it is really smooth, no vibration whatsoever, as you see here. And that's why balancing the blades is so important, to reduce that vibration from the deck. And with that, I believe we could safely bring this project to a close. And that concludes this video on the John Deere E100 series deck removal, maintenance, and reinstallation. I hope you found this video enjoyable, entertaining, and informative. Do me a favor, hit that like button down below, helps me out a lot when you do, and hit that subscribe button to be informed about more videos like this when they come out. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Would you like to reply?